When most players think about tells, they visualize physical actions at the poker table, shaking hands, chip manipulations, or maybe even a certain posture in a chair. Online players don't have this sort of information to work with, but that doesn't mean there are no tells in online play. In this lesson, I'll show you some common online tells. You'll probably be surprised to learn how helpful these tells can be in determining the best way to play a hand. Here's what we're going to be covering in this lesson. What you can learn from a look around the table, things like your opponent's buy-in or other indicators of your opponent's skill. How you can use the full tilt lobby to learn more about the players you're up against, including the Find a Player feature. We'll spend most of the lesson talking about how timing tells give information about the strengths of players' hands. Finally, I'll talk about how you can avoid giving off tells yourself. The tells that you're going to see in this session were pulled from a 1-2 and 2-4 no-limit session I played at Full Tilt Poker. When I sit down at a table, the first thing I'll look at is how much my opponents have bought in for in relation to the table maximum. Most advanced players, winning players, will buy in for as close to the table maximum as possible. They prefer to have as many chips on the table as possible, which gives them a lot of ammo for bluffing, semi-bluffing, and bullying their opponents. Some of the weaker players, more inexperienced players, generally will buy in for a more cautious amount, close to the table minimum or somewhere in between 20, 30, 40 big blinds. These are the types of players when I'm selecting a table that I'm looking for because they're generally the weakest opponents at the table. At this 1-2 no limit table that I sat at, you can see most of these players have over 100 big blinds or $200 stacks. These players are most likely to be the best players at the table and are generally the tougher players in any game that you play. However, there's one player who's bought in for 52.35 and is most likely to be a weaker player due to his short buy-in. This is the type of person that I'm looking to play against when I'm playing online poker. Another indicator of strength is the presence of the Iron Man chip. The Iron Man chip is given to players at Full Tilt Poker who play the most amount of hands. These players are generally some of the best players at the tables because they play the most at Full Tilt Poker and have worked on their game. When I sit down at a table, I'll look to see if any of my opponents have this Iron Man chip, and I'll generally regard them as solid players because these players have played a ton of hands at the table. The Iron Man chip is actually a configurable option at the Full Tilt Poker website, and if I'm lucky enough to earn an Iron Man chip due to my previous month's play, I'll turn that Iron Man chip off so that my astute opponents cannot pick up any information on me. One other thing that I'll do when I'm looking for a game to play in or when I'm at a table is use the Find a Player feature to find out more information about my opponents. When you use the Find a Player feature, you can find out how many tables your opponents are playing. If you search for a player and he's only playing 1 or 2 tables, this really doesn't tell you anything. However, when you search for a player and he's playing 4, 6, 8, or even more tables, he's generally a very solid player. Players who are playing this many tables are usually professionals and are generally some of the best players on the site. Here in this session I played, I was curious about the player to my right, so I used the Find a Player feature to find out more information about this player. As you can see, this player is playing a ton of different tables, seemingly over 8 tables. This means that this player is a massive multi-tabling poker player, which generally means he's probably a professional and is also likely to be a very good player. I'll definitely keep this in mind when I'm playing pots against him in the future. When I'm at the tables, I'm constantly looking at how long it's taking my opponents to make their decisions. The amount of time that an opponent takes to make his decision can often give me information about the type of hand that opponent has. As we move forward, I'm going to look at timing tells and talk about the information that you can gain from them. In this hand, I'm playing 1-2 no limit at full tilt. I'm dealt 8 king offsuit on the button, and I decide to raise it up when it's folded to me. Oftentimes this will win the hand as my opponents in the blinds will fold often. My opponent calls very quickly out of the big blind and then quickly checks. I flopped a very good hand with 8s and a king kicker, which is a very good hand heads up. At this point, my opponent has a very small stack, so I've decided to check behind because I can get 2 streets of value on the turn in the river, and it's enough to get my opponent all in. My opponent quickly checks again, and it's important to note that my opponent has acted very quickly in all decisions in this hand so far. At this point, I still have a very good hand with trips and a good kicker,